Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have Miss Leann with us today. Leann was married with children for only a few years when she was confronted with divorce. With her children and her sanity as her main focus, she had a choice to confront this new challenge with a negative or a positive mindset. We know what that's like. Leann quickly reinvented herself on a dime and is now here to share all the wonderful things she has learned along the way. She is here to talk about how she not only endured all these new ventures in her life, but how she conquered all of them. Leann is an expert in her field of co-parenting, divorce, dating, and relationships. She speaks candidly about her own experiences and how she has created a healthy co-parenting dynamic with her ex, along with answering the big question, which I actually could have used a few years ago. How do I bring someone new home to meet my children after that big D word? I'm so happy to have Leann here with us to shed some light on this topic. Welcome, lady.
Thank you, Sabrina.
How are you?
I love it. I'm so glad to be here and share all the experiences that I've had. And you touched on so many of them in the intro. So thank you very much.
Yes, of course. And thank you for taking some time in your day to hang out with us and chill. Where are you from, by the way? What state do you live in?
I live in Los Angeles, so I live in California.
Yeah. We're literally on opposite sides.
I know. Well, I am an East Coast girl originally. I'm originally from North Carolina. I lived in New York for 15 years. And so I've been in California now for 6.
No kidding. So you really literally went from one ocean to the other ocean. Which ocean's better? Do you remember?
I like both of them for different reasons. I do. I mean, I love the East Coast, especially in the South. I mean, the water is so warm. It's just a different, more serene, peaceful kind of experience. We're here on the West Coast. I think it's just visually so beautiful, especially here in Southern California, where you have the ocean and then the mountains right there. Mm-hmm. So, it's epic all the time, although the water's cold.
There you go. There you go. So North Carolina, that's where my parents live.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They live in a small little town in North Carolina. They love it. They've been there for like 18 years, originally from Chicago.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have settled there. It is sort of this anomaly state that has the oceans, it has the beaches. It's southern, but it's still northern. It's the northernmost southern state, I think.
Yes.
In a lot of capacities. So it's beautiful. I'm there all the time with my kids. So
that's awesome. Very, very cool. Well, listen, I want to dive in and get to all the juicy stuff. What I'd like to kind of cover first is just the main story of it. Your marriage, when you were married, your children, and then we'll kind of journey through what you kind of had to go through. But tell us about how the whole thing went down.
Oh, thank you. So I was actually married for 13 years. So we were in each other's lives for now close to 20 years. But, when I got married, I was in my late 20s and it was this very fairy tale marriage. He is, an actor and I was a model. So it was, very, whirlwind. And we actually had a great marriage when it was just the two of us. When we started having children, it got a little hairy. So I think really, as a female having children, I started having kids in my mid 30s. I started to shift. I started to change. So, I was going more internal for looking for further purpose, wanting to be the best mom I could be, you know, raising my children. I always wanted to be a mom. That was my priority. And, you know, with the industries and the professions that we were in, all of our, you know, income and sense of value was outside of ourselves. So, you know, me shifting and going more internal and finding deeper purpose, it challenged, you know, what dynamic we already had going on. And then as I really started to shift, and carry all of the emotional responsibility. I'd always carried the emotional responsibility of our relationship. And then I added 2 kids on top of that, and then wanting, you know, a deeper sense of purpose in life. It was extremely challenging. And, you know, our relationship and the capacity for my partner at the time wasn't there. So, you know, I could no longer really muster the energy to carry the 2 of us in a relationship and be a mother. And, you know, it was tough. So it wasn't, you know, divorce for me was a huge failure in my life, as what I've had to work through on the other end of it. It was not something that either of our families really experienced. So we were kind of winging it on our own. And so, you know, when we were faced with making that decision, it was extremely impulsive. It was quick. It was heated with emotion. It was, you know, not thought out properly. It was not seamless at all. There was a lot of pain, a lot of, you know, upset and the whole thing. So, you know, coming through that, I leaned heavily into coaching. I had a coach. It wasn't necessarily for a relationship, it was just life in general. And I definitely recommend therapy, coaching, something, because I recognize that my network of support and friends and family, you know, I was in a realm that was outside of their capacity for what I was looking for later on. I mean, certainly there was love there. There was, you know, an ear to listen to, a shoulder to cry on, but to really get me to the next level of where I wanted and what I needed in my life at that time to move through that. And that's when I did. I got coached for a couple of years.
Wow. Good to know. Because people wonder about that, if that's something that's necessary.
It's absolutely necessary. I mean, I think when you are transitioning in life in any capacity, especially with a divorce, especially with children in the mix, you can't do it on your own. There is too much emotion. There's too many factors at the table. The priorities are endless at that point. And guidance is key, you know,
Yeah.
solid guidance from, you know, either a trained professional or someone that, you know, can hold space for you and help you like look at things from different perspectives. Because, you know, when you're in it, your brain is crazy. And when you're, you know, when you're at the wall like this, all you can see is the wall, right? So
Yeah.
it
How old
helps.
were your children, by the way, when all this was happening?
They were 4 and 5 and 7, 4 and 6 or 5 and 7.
Okay. Because a lot of times that's a worry, you know, what age to do it at, you know, because a lot of times, and I'm sure you've heard, you know, the woman or one of the people is usually detaching themselves emotionally before they actually detach themselves physically.
Absolutely.
So, you know, there's this heaviness in your mind as far as like what age is the appropriate age to actually, you know, let that bomb go
Do it.
off.
I mean, I don't feel that there is any good age for anyone to get divorced, but
Thank you.
you know, if they're younger, you know, there is more time to create a new sense of self, a new sense of family life, a new path. Whereas if they're older, you know, they have a lot of these memories. They do have to kind of unravel some of what they've been used to. Um, but that's also positive on the other side too. I think it's really how, you know, the parents really handle it. Initially, sometimes if you're, you know, in a position that you are really thinking it through and you're, you know, able to really make conscious, intentional decisions during your divorce, you know, more power to you. I don't feel like most people are in that position. They're, you know, flying by the seat of their pants emotionally. There's just a lot of stuff shifting very quickly, and no one's really making smart decisions for everybody as a whole. So, you know, I coach people that have younger children. I have coach people that have older kids. So, you know, at any point, it's really just what you're creating and how you're communicating that through the process.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. You kind of already touched on this, but just to kind of give it a little more detail, uh, because I know that this is like the main question, what are some of the biggest worries that you kind of went through when dealing with this divorce? And then what is your advice for women who are just in general, who are kind of like right on the brink of dealing with this right now?
I think the two main things that I was worried about was taking care of myself financially and damaging my children. Those were the two things. I was, I had a solid career. And then when I started having children, I was primarily caring for them. And I ran a couple of small multi-level marketing businesses on the side, but I was worried financially. So, I threw myself back into work. I actually shifted, like you said, on a dime, and shifted my career and, created an entirely new sense of self, an identity for myself. And so I think, people that are, in a solid career, or they're in a profession, and they know that might not be their worry, but also, being able to provide for their children, and what that, what your lifestyle is, and maintaining it, or how you're going to shift in that. It is certainly a big concern. And so having guidance, whether it's, speaking to a lawyer, speaking to a divorce coach, speaking to someone that can help you sort of look at those priorities, make decisions based off of that, and what your, parameters are going to be within the divorce. The second part was my kids. I was so worried about, emotionally what my kids were going to be. And they were young. It was traumatic. It was hurtful for them. We did make as much effort as possible to, stay both very present in their lives. We went through a nesting process where the kids, yes, financial reasons. We nested, so the kids stayed in one place, and we kind of came in and out as we were separating and doing that. I eventually, maintained the original home that we are in, so that, there was consistency there. But, I think when my ex and I were able to really be in the same room and talk to each other, and it not be heated, it made the children much more comfortable. So as of now, it's been 4 years, and we have, again, and we'll touch on this throughout our conversation today, is really making some strong choices to co-parent with the best interest of the kids in the center of that as a priority. So I'll speak more about that, but that was at the forefront. What can be the easiest experience for them? I want them to feel loved. I want them to feel secure and safe. That's a great book. Mom's House, Dad's House is a phenomenal book to bring into the mix. And it's also about communication. It doesn't matter how old they are. You have to at least tell them something that is true, that you can consistently maintain, and that helps them feel safe and secure. Because as an adult, when you're going through that process and you're going through that major transition, whether it's quick and immediate, or even if it's a long drawn out process, it's a huge change. And so they feel that too. And their sense of security is really, what they want. They want to feel secure. They want to know and have some consistency. So keeping a routine is important. At your house, at Dad's house, and a communication routine.
Oh, yes. Routine. I
Yeah,
hadn't thought about that. That's true.
keeping a routine. And so that was the priority for me, keeping them in the place that they felt was home, their schools, their friends, their sports, all of that stuff, because that is something that they could rely on, and they can count on, certain
Yeah.
holidays, certain foods, dinner at the same time, what the evening routine is. And so like we would really settle into, movie night. We'd have dinner and have our little movie night. And even today, like 4 years later, and they're, much older, they're like, all right, it's movie night tonight. They love it. So, also we started to establish a lot of new experiences with just mom and the kids, just like dad was doing, so that there were new thoughts, new memories that they could lean into.
Absolutely. Yes. It's interesting, talking about this because I do old journal readings every Monday. Every Monday I come on and I read very embarrassing old journal entries from when I was like 14,
Oh,
13,
wow.
12 years old. Yes. So, one of the things that I'm appreciating about what you're saying, though, as far as creating new memories, is going back through my journals. Right now I'm going to chronological order. So I started at 12. That's when I started journaling. I'm at age 14 now, 8 journals in, and I can't even tell you how many impactful experiences, so impactful that I was like intensely writing in extreme detail and did not, to right now as we talk, do not remember that experience at all. And it's insane to me how many times while I'm reading that I actually say out loud, like, I don't remember any of this. I don't even, like, I'll have a whole thing about a person, something happened.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't even know who this person is. I have no recollection of this person. So doing what you're saying as far as creating new memories, because it's so easy if you make them strong enough and big enough and, what's the word you said? You said structured, like consistent.
Mhm.
Um, those are the things that will actually create and possibly, you don't want to say erase, but kind of like, smudge up that area where the divorce was happening. And that can happen. You can do that. I can speak from personal experience that
Yeah.
can happen. So that's so interesting. What was some of the biggest struggles that you went through mentally?
My sense of identity. One of the things that I mentioned earlier on is, the fact that I was going through a divorce. I felt like such a failure. I had never, you know, my sense of value, my sense of worth, from how I was raised in my family, and also, from his family, like marriage and family were at the forefront. And the two of us were sort of the anomaly of not, foraging the typical path, even though we came from, small towns in the Northeast and Southeast. We were living our dreams. We were pushing the envelope with, what the careers we were in, where we were living, the things that we were doing. And what we had always tried to create for ourselves was a sense of normalcy and routine with having the family. And so when that completely was, gone, or that dream or fantasy of creating what that was completely gone, it was like unknown. Like, what is it going to be now? How am I going to create? How am I going to be happy? How are my children going to be happy? How are we going to make this all work? We didn't have a roadmap for it. It was creating that roadmap. So that was one of the biggest challenges for myself, was figuring that out. And, my partner, my ex-partner at that, well, he was still my partner at the time, but the capacity was not there to really meet me and figure this out. Like, I had to do it on my own. And then show through actions and behaviors and conversations, like, this is how should work for the betterment of the kids. And then also, I think one of the things that I was really unraveling is that, I'd been in a partnership most of my adult life at that point, of being singular, of being an individual, and not thinking of another person, not thinking as a couple, but thinking singularly. But that other person is still in your life. And then you have these two children in the mix too, that, are a reminder of that entire time. So there was a lot of unraveling that was difficult to do, a lot of, habitual thoughts of value, sense of self, sense of worth, sense of being a mother, sense of being a wife, um, looking at those priorities and breaking them down and seeing what is just a thought, what is just conditioned thought, and what is, what am I wanting and what am I really thinking right now and for the future self that I'm creating.
Absolutely. Do you have any thoughts on what would be called or is stereotyped as mom guilt?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Mom guilt is that you are. I mean, my definition of it is the feeling that you are not, that you're lacking the ability to be the best person or the best mother to your children, or that you're damaging them by the decisions that you're making. And that could be, I fed my kid mac and cheese for 4 days. I mean, it could be that, or it could be, where we are of choosing yourself and your own mental health and the stability of that over, the marriage.
Yeah, 100%. How did you kind of, I don't want to say heal, but how did you kind of work through those thoughts?
Like I said, I got coached. I had, on a weekly basis, I was able to work through, I was guided to get to know myself, where I am right now. There were practices, there were techniques, homework. A lot of this I share with in my coaching programs now, of unraveling those thoughts and sitting with them and seeing where your thoughts are right now and how do you want to feel and what do you want to think, because you ultimately get to make that decision. And then building that muscle for myself of trusting my decisions, trusting how I was feeling, even if it wasn't, I think a lot of times we are conditioned and we're taught, like, you make this decision, you got to stick with it forever, right?
Mhm.
Same thing with marriage, same thing with, all those things. And it's giving yourself permission to make a decision. I'm deciding to do this. I'm going to commit to this, and then see how far it goes, right? Maybe it's forever, maybe it's for 4 months, whatever, but also giving yourself permission to shift, when it's time, when it's appropriate. And so those were really skills that I had not honed for myself, because I was really living most of my marriage thinking of, the other person's well-being, how am I managing them? How are they feeling today? So, just really bringing that self-care and from a mental wellness perspective, not just, physically or yogas or things like that, which is great, but bringing in more meditation, bringing in more peace, more calm, choosing those types of practices that I was introduced to and sticking with them consistently so that I could see a different result in my thinking, how I was feeling. Because I think when you're in that transition, it is very moment to moment, it's day to day, and then eventually it becomes week to week, month to month, and then you can kind of move through that. But initially, it is just getting through that emotion at that moment for that 10 minutes, for that 20 minutes. And so that's, an opportunity and practices to build that mental stamina, but also feeling. So many times we don't allow ourselves to feel what we're
100%.
feeling, feeling the grief, feeling the pain, feeling the failure, the shame, the mom guilt, allowing myself to have all of those feelings, and creating space for that so that you move through it. Because when you have emotions and you don't sit with them, they come up and they manifest in other situations. So
Exactly.
feeling your feelings, giving yourself some practices, staying consistent, and stretching those mental muscles, to get you, find what works for you in those sticky times.
Yeah. And not feeling guilty about it.
Or if you are feeling guilty, just owning it. Like, look, I feel guilty right now, and that's it. I'm just gonna feel guilty, and then I'm gonna move through it.
Absolutely. I love that. In your experience, as far as your coaching and mentoring and stuff, what do you think are two misconceptions when it comes to co-parenting?
This was a great question. It's something I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about because I think that number one misconception would be that it has to be a specific way. It's something that, I read this and it needs to go this way. I have to apply it no matter how difficult or what resistance I get. That's a misconception. You really have to evaluate your scenario, where you are, and what dynamic you have with your ex. And then take that scenario and apply some strategies to it. So it's not cookie cutter. It's not one way.
Yeah.
The second misconception is, I think, hiding things from the children. That's a misconception. If I hide it and I protect them from it, then, they're not going to feel the pain of it. So obviously there are clearly defined scenarios that are adult centered that should be, not necessarily shared. But when it comes to, the challenges that are coming up, find a way to communicate to the kids so that they understand why there's emotion going on, why things are shifting, what the next step is going to be, and reassuring them that, things will be okay. But I think too often people think if I don't tell the kids this or I don't tell them that, they won't know. And that's not true. Kids feel energy. They feel energetically what's going on before they verbally understand anything. And that's true from when they're small as well. So, my children may have felt that there was always a fight going on because there was an energetic fight always happening, even if it wasn't verbal.
Ah, absolutely.
So however you're feeling, however you're showing up to the table, in your, mornings, days, nights, whatever, you really have to be centered in that and be very clear because your kids are feeling it, and then be able to communicate in a way that, you feel that they're going to be able to understand.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. And I love that you brought that up because that would be that my situation's way different, so I can't necessarily relate to that. However, in that situation, I would have felt as if I needed to hide things from my son because I think that's just something that people say to do. Like, don't involve your children in adult matters.
Which I
But
agree
I
with.
can see where you're saying, like, yes, and there are things that you need to communicate with them as far as like there's a ton of changes going on.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. I think that the children don't need to be involved specifically in adult scenarios that they can't understand. But what they can understand, and again, it goes back to your sense of self, and that's why therapy and coaching and support in that way really helps because it gives you clarity on what your priorities are, what your next steps are going to be, because you're figuring things out on your own at that point. The more clear you are, the better you are able to show up and fully be present with your children when you have the time with them, to communicate with them the way that, they understand and they feel comfortable and they feel safe. But if you're chaotic and you're not focused and you're not clear, that is absolutely what the whole sense of the house is, or when you're with your children and they don't know and don't feel grounded.
Yeah.
So, you do have to focus on you. And that is, like I'd mentioned before, that's what I focused on, was centering me, getting clear, helping myself understand so that I can communicate, so that I could move through that process.
Yeah. To go along with what you're saying, communicating with the children, letting them know what's going on, and obviously you can only have power over yourself. But what do you do if your spouse is just not being civil at all? Like if there seems to be no hope, how are we supposed to handle that?
Well, again, you really can only have control over yourself, right? And your immediate surroundings. So you really can't control what the other person is going to do. You just have to be ready and armed with how you're going to react to it. So if the other parent is completely off the wall or being extremely inconsistent, you do have the power to, legally go to mediation or go to the powers that be that can make those decisions if you can't, make any changes there. But also just on the immediate is making sure that there is sort of, when you do switch over, the kids, when they are back in your care predominantly, or for that period of time, whether you're on a 2-2-3 schedule, you're sharing, or if it's a weekend thing, just making sure that they are coming back. There's a transition time, okay, if you want to share anything, if, maybe it's just physical, maybe you're just giving them love. Maybe they come home and you get to have a great meal and they get a hot bath, and that's kind of their decompressing, coming back to mom's place, just making it a safe place to talk about things if they're able to do that, and share how they're feeling, because there may be anxiety around situations. But just knowing that you have options, you have, you can go, legally through scenarios to have the children more in your care or full custody if it's very crazy. And if it's not and is super inconsistent, you be the example. You be the person to say, these are the boundaries, and you have to stick with them, whether it is emotional, whether, the inconsistencies. I know that a lot of, parents, dad, they're promised to come, but they can't come. And, there's that letdown of the kid not actually seeing the other parent at that time, thinking through that scenario. Okay, well, that happened 2 weeks ago. Well, what if it happens again? What's going to be my conversation with my child if this happens again? How long do I wait to tell them that dad is going to come? You start to kind of figure out like what's going to work best. And again, not hiding anything, but maybe minimizing the disappointment if that happens, things like that. So it's really just about sitting down with yourself, just like you were saying that you journaled your whole life. Sit down with your journal, write out, do a thought download, do an emotional download over different scenarios that maybe you've experienced or that you could experience because of the situation. And create those for yourself to say, okay, if this scenario happens, what is the thought that I'm having about it? What action am I going to take? What kind of conversation am I going to have? That way you're prepared, because again, you are the only one that's in control of yourself and your immediate surroundings.
100%. Do you want to respond to Blue?
Oh, yes. She says, it was super important for me to learn emotional boundaries for myself, to not be able to be consistent for my child. 100%. And I think that when you're in yes, disappointment doesn't have to be devastating. Exactly. It really doesn't have to be devastating. It's the yes and, right? I'm sad, but I can still function. How am I taking care of myself in that sadness or in that disappointment? It's thinking about things. It all stems from your thoughts about, your thoughts create your actions, create your result, right? So if you can really sit with what you're thinking and separate it from the emotion that you're having. I think this and I feel this. A lot of times it's blended in when it's in our heads. It just spins around and we, create this cycle of, well, I feel this, but do I think this? You don't really know. So when you're sitting down and you're writing it down, you're able to separate it and evaluate things for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. As far as, like you said, every divorce, looks different, and we all have a range of emotions that we're going through. As far as, after the divorce and some time has gone by and we're working on the co-parenting, what do you think, in your opinion, is a healthy amount of time to wait before, let's stick with the mother, before the mother should start dating again?
Such a great question. I mean, if I was to go back in time, even for myself, I would have waited at least a year. Just to
Wow.
get
Okay.
myself, back in order and really understand, because, I didn't wait. I was right in a relationship, and it's just not healthy. You're bringing all of the baggage, all of the negativity, all of the pain. It's generally not going to be a long-term relationship, because you're just, it's an extension of where you are, right? So I mean, for me, I wish I had waited a year, but I didn't. And then I did take a year off from dating after that, so it was a little bit delayed. But I would say 6 months to a year. It really depends where you are. If you are, completely, for years of being in a marriage that, is completely emotionally void, you guys are living kind of separate lives, and you're amicably going through a divorce, I would say 3 to 6 months. You might already be ready for that. But if you're going through sort of a divorce that's maybe not planned, or it's a more immediate and there's a lot more to work through, give yourself 6 months to a year. It's a short amount of time in the long-term part of your life. It
Yeah.
seems very long. But it's also hard to be alone if you've been in a partnership, even if you're alone in the marriage, even
Mhm.
if you're alone doing so many things in that marriage or that partnership. It's still hard to be alone. So that's, again, where you get really clear. Do I want to date someone because I'm bored, I'm lonely? Am I looking for a partner that's a parental figure for my child? Once you start to really figure those things out for yourself, then going into, dating situation, getting out there and meeting people, your intention is very different.
That totally makes sense. And even, touching on the um emotional capacity as far as after or during the final stages of your marriage, because I went through that too. I mean, I was out of love for years before I actually left my last relationship. And even at that, being completely 100% detached mentally, physically, emotionally, once I finally walked out, I did the same thing where I kind of fell into another one within a month or two. And it was a disaster because you're having to like unlearn somebody else's idiosyncrasies that you're projecting onto this new person that's like totally has nothing to do with anything. And then on top of that, you're trying to heal yourself.
Yeah.
It's too much. And
It's a lot
then,
of emotional energy that is
yeah,
going nowhere, and you think that you need that. Oh, I need that next relationship. I need someone to love me, to show me kindness or attention and things like that. But those are things that you can learn to give yourself for a period of time, so that you don't feel. And so when you are going back into the dating space, you're not feeling that void outside of yourself as much. But it's hard to do when you are in it.
yeah,
But if you are conscious enough to say, stop, maybe this isn't the right time, then seek advice, seek a therapist, seek a coach. There's so many podcasts out there like this one. There's so many free resources to just really lean into now, especially over the last couple of years. But, let's just, say the last 5 to 7 years, it's more available to you. There's resources there. Listen to other people's stories, see what someone else is going through. Maybe you identify with something like that. But then it's also being disciplined. And that is where, like Blue was saying, it was important for her to learn emotional boundaries. We don't always know how to do that.
mhm,
Really understanding that you do have to take time for yourself. Um, let's see what Blue has to say. She says, it took many years for me to actually leave. I knew I wouldn't heal overnight. I give myself the space and time to learn to love myself and to be happy with just me. I know my son is watching all that I do and learning to be happy with himself. That's amazing.
yeah.
That's, pat yourself on the back. We are applauding you. That is huge. It's just taking time for you. Yay. And understanding that that is what you were looking for, and that is what you needed, was the emotional support. and the emotional boundaries to heal. The healing process is different for everyone. The grieving process is different from everyone. And we don't know how long that's going to take us until we're literally in it.
100%. I was going to ask you something. I don't remember what it is, but it was really good. As far as tips, I think that's like the number one, the number one thing that you see sometimes on these magazines. But like, what are some tips you have for dating after divorce?
Oh, these are good. Healthy tips for dating after divorce. I sort of have a 3-step process. It's getting really clear. So understanding what you're looking for and why. Number 2 is really taking those conscious actions and taking action, actually going out and dating. We can sit and think about it in our head all the time, but get out there. Put yourself in situations where you do have to have communication and conversations. Make sure you've got that list of questions to ask so that you get to know this other person. And then integrating that, into your daily life. So if you're in a position of wanting to meet new people, don't be tied to just one vehicle. Some people say, oh, well, I don't like dating apps, or I really hate when people introduce me to people. If you're out there dating, you've made the decision that you're out there, then you need to put down all of those barriers, because you may be on dating apps, but that might not be where you're meeting someone. It might be the person that you've been working out to or jogging or doing a hike with, that keeps seeing you. Be open to that energy. Don't kind of do it half-ass. Don't say, well, I'm going to date, and if they don't respond to this, then it's a no. That's the part of getting super clear and being intentional. So being intentional, getting out there, and then being fully open and really integrating it into every aspect of your life. So those are my top 3 tips to get out there initially.
Yes, I have something to add. Again, asking for your opinion on this, but my fiance and I, we met on a dating app. We actually met on one of the worst dating apps out there, Plenty of Fish. And it was like, I got on as a joke. I was on, the phone with my girlfriend one night, and we were just kind of joking around, and we both got on Google. She's in Chicago, I'm in Florida, and we signed up for just a random dating app, whichever one came up. Her first one on Google was a different one than mine, and we helped each other write our descriptions and everything. And we kind of like laughed and whatever, and went to bed. And then the next morning I woke up, and I don't know if you've been on a dating app before, but it's ridiculous. You like wake up to like 130 messages, and you get this huge ego boost. You're like, oh my God, I'm the beautifulest chick on the face of the planet. But my question to you is, I get frustrated because the stereotype of dating apps is bad. And a lot of individuals that I speak to, clients predominantly, tend to have this roadblock up with dating apps are horrible. And they're just not open to it. And my experience was amazing. I probably went on like 12 dates, no judgment. And some of them I saw for longer, like several dates in a row. And it was amazing. It was literally amazing. Now, could I see the negative side? Yeah, there was some shifty stuff, but like overall, it was great. What would be your advice for females that are kind of stuck in this hole of like, I'm a divorcee, I have children, dating apps suck, and all the good ones are taken?
I love this question. This is so awesome. And I think it really goes back to, I'm so glad you shared your experience with the dating app, because it completely supports what I was talking about of being fully committed and energetic and excited. You were hopeful, you were positive, and you had no negativity surrounding it when you entered it, right? So it was fun for you. And when someone is negative and they're fearful and they're questioning and doubtful, that's what's going to come to them. every time there's a scenario where it doesn't work out or they didn't write back or whatever, they're going to hold on to that as supporting the reason I shouldn't be on this app, right?
100%.
If you're going into it with an open mind to say, look, I'm interested in meeting people. I'd like to go on some dates with some great people and just get my feet wet again and just put it out there instead of having, don't have like this, the next person I meet is my person. Like, that's unrealistic. That's an expectation that is very hard to stick to, and there's going to be a lot of disappointment there. You can certainly have an underlying intention of maybe, people that you choose or people that you go on dates with are looking for long-term relationship. Like, that's a parameter to stick with. But making sure that you are, when you're in that negative mindset, there's no reason to do it because something is always going to be disappointing to you. Something is always going to trigger that support to say, oh, no, shouldn't be on it. They weren't who they said they were going to be. They were 2 inches shorter and I don't like that.
That's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
Or they had hair. They had hair in all their pictures and they show up with no hair. That's
no hair. Exactly. Right. And that's why you need to have a FaceTime. You need to have a conversation before committing to going on a date with someone. And one of the things that I always advise my single moms that are going out there is have a lunch date, have a breakfast coffee so that it's short. You can see who they are. You're not paying for a sitter and they're not cutting into that quality time and that evening routine that you have with your kids, right? So get a couple of those under your belt so that you can kind of see who this person is in the daytime, right? And then you're not setting yourself up for that typical, we're going to dinner, what happens after, are we going to drinks? And you're just putting yourself in a scenario that maybe you're not comfortable with yet. Maybe you do dinner like date 4 or 5, and you keep it light, you keep it in the daytime just to kind of see what's going on. So, I think number one is intention, right? If you're not sure about the dating app, don't go on the dating app. If you want to just wing it and play around with it, then be in that playful mindset and don't be judgmental of what's coming to you.
Absolutely. I love the word playful. That's 100% how you have to engage with it.
And it's fun. I mean, you might not meet a romantic partner, but you might actually meet some really fun people that expand your network, right?
That does happen. Yeah, that does happen. And I also enjoy you saying a cup of coffee because I don't know about you, but one of the issues that I have dealt with in my life as an empath, always like wanting to make sure that everyone I'm with is very, very happy, is falling into that cycle of 3 dinners and then sex. It's kind of like for me, not projecting, for me, it's kind of a guilt thing of like, once they've invested so much money and so much time into you, it's almost like our payback is a requirement. So going back into the dating scene after, this last relationship, that was a big thing for me where I was really starting to figure out boundaries. I had never had boundaries before, figuring out what I actually wanted. And that exactly what you said is exactly what I did. But for different reasons. I did it because I didn't want to get caught in a cycle of, 3, 4 dinners and then having to, perform or whatever that is. So I purposely would be like, let's go for coffee or let's go for a walk. Let's go to the park so that heaviness, I know how I am as a person myself and how I feel as a person. So in order to kind of take my power back, how can I do this so that I am powerful in this situation and avoid that feeling for myself? And that would be to avoid the dinners. And it worked perfectly.
I love that. I think that's perfect. But you knew that about yourself, right? Which is getting clear and knowing where you wanted to set those boundaries and intentions 100%. And you're right. There are stereotypes. There are sort of social, norms that we feel females feel obligated to, but also men, if they might not want to lean into a dinner, the first time maybe they want to go to coffee. It doesn't mean they like you any less, absolutely. 100%. And, when you're dating as an adult and you're divorced, you have children, it's a different mindset from when you were dating when you were younger.
Exactly.
So you get to create the path for that. And if someone isn't like, if they don't like it or they call you out on it, then they're not your person. They're like,
Exactly.
okay, but we're not going to move forward.
Exactly. Exactly. As far as dating goes and seeing somebody for a little more long term, what would you say would be an appropriate amount of time to go by before you introduce that person to your children?
I'm so glad you asked this question. I mean, this is something that is, a lot of people, well, everybody asks, what do I do? What do I do? I always say at least 3 months. 6 months is probably ideal, but 3 months that's my standard. 3 to 4 months is my standard, and that's what I really push. Let's think about it for a second. You meet someone new, or even if they're an acquaintance, right? You have the value of who you are, your environment, your dynamics. You have a full life, right? You're not going to get to know that person very well in a month. You're not necessarily, you could spend every day with them for 2 hours. And that's not realistic, especially when you have a busy life and you're a parent and have a career and all of those things. 3 months, if someone is consistently exhibiting behaviors over that period of time, you've had enough time to have scenarios, you're likely, becoming romantic and intimate at that point, then it gives you something to kind of base your decision on. If you're just immediately introducing your kids and you end up not liking this person, that's another scenario that you then have to unravel from and deal with. It's better to take the time to get to know this person in different situations, and that you've created in your life, and what their lifestyle is. That's really important, especially when you're older and when you're dating as an adult. What is that person's lifestyle? What do they like to do? Does it match with me? Do we enjoy the same things? And then if you both have kids or one has a child, you're absolutely going to come up to obstacles. Have some of those obstacles that you have to figure out along the way before, oh, well, we can't go to this weekend because, my ex is ill, or he has to go out of town. I have to take the kids. There's plenty of opportunities to have those sticky situations that you have to negotiate between. Is this the person, are they showing up as a person that you want to invest more time with? But a week out, a month out, 6 weeks out isn't really enough time for you to get a handle on who this person is, and if they're a fit for your life. And I like to coin your relationship culture, like what you bring to the table. What do they
Yes,
bring to the table?
absolutely. What about, as far as to go along with that question, what about your like the new partner's children? What's the time scale for that? I just thought
I
of
would say it would be at least that, at least 3 to 4 months. If I think the conversation is, I don't feel comfortable introducing you to my kids until, we've at least been together for at least 3, maybe 4 months. And you probably, I wouldn't want to be introduced to someone else's child at that point either, before that point, because, maybe they are aware of you. Maybe they know, oh, well, dad's dating Leann now, a month in or 2 months in, but it doesn't have to shift their dynamic of what they've got going on as well. I would say also, the other partner meeting my kids would not be with their children, and me meeting the other partner would not be with my kids and just meeting their children, so that there's point of reference, right? So that's not overwhelming for everyone. And immediately the thoughts of the Brady Bunch are coming up for all the kids. Like, oh, this is an opportunity. Oh, we might be brothers and sisters. Just take that off the table. That can come later if you're really moving forward in the relationship, and 5, 6 months in, or after you meet each other and say, oh, well, let's get the kids together. Let's see how this works. Because as single parents, that's predominantly such a big part of your life, is being a parent. So that's why, I think it's important to introduce the children, you to the other person's children, them to you, and vice versa. Because if it's not a mesh thing that's going to work, then, maybe it doesn't continue. So you do have to go through that and you do have to explore it, but you really have to know if this is someone that you really want to go down that journey with first.
Absolutely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I appreciate you coming on and sharing all this information. This has been amazing for me, even because for two reasons. One, told me how much I screwed up some of my areas.
That wasn't perfect either. Let's be
But
real.
then number two, kind of allowing me to pat myself on the back for some of the situations that I did a really good job on.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Yes.
I appreciate you taking some time to do that. So, talking, between you and I and your personal experience and what you've been through and where you are now, how do you decide to show up for your world and your kids now?
Oh, what a great question. I am in my kids see their mom as an entrepreneur. Coaching other people, I'm teaching other people, I'm sharing advice with other people, and helping them through life. And they hear me, they see me, they love it. In fact, my older son, who's 12, almost 12, he's the go-to person with his little friend group. What do I do? How do I do this? He's also the person that told my ex-husband when he was going through his breakup, you should really talk to mom. She'll help you through this. So but
That's great.
I love that my ex texted me and I said, oh, that's amazing. So I'm showing up as someone that is, guides people, helps people through situations. And also in a relationship. I mean, I'm in a relationship. And we show up together for dinners and fun things, and they really like the partner that I'm with now. So that's really important. So yeah, I think in general, I'm showing up as my true self, as the person that I am every day with my clients, with my children. They see me doing yoga. They know what I'm meditating. So all of that is incorporated. They do meditations at night. They listen to different sleep stories. So, what I've created for myself and how I talk about things and how I communicate is being supported by what my children are bringing back to me, by, my communication style and how I'm talking with my partner now. And it all blends together. I'm very happy about it. I think everyone's thriving. We didn't really touch on it much, but I do have a great relationship with my ex-husband. And we have a great co-parenting relationship. So, everybody gets together, everybody hangs out, and it's great. And my children feel that it's just fluid. There's not a stop and start in their life. So
That's awesome. So, not that we want to project your life onto other people's lives, but how long did it take? Because you did go through a little bit of turmoil. So,
yes.
how long did it take for you to get from that point of hot anger and frustration or whatever you were going through to a point of grace and solitude and calmness?
Well, I think it was probably layered. I would say it took about maybe a year to have real forgiveness and peace and grace with the whole situation. And then it was waiting for my ex to show up in that same space. So maybe a year and a half to really get on the same page of listening to each other, understanding each other. And probably 2.5 years to get to the place of showing up in a co-parenting, mutually discussed situation, mindset, so to speak, of just having those conversations for the betterment of the kids, both being responsible, both taking responsibility for our, participation in it, supporting each other that way. So 2.5 years.
That's awesome. As far as you sneaking in there, that you came to a calmness before he kind of came to a calmness. I love that. That was very eloquently worded. How did he come to that point? Did you kind of teach him through example or through actual like preaching? How did you get him to that point?
I led by example with my actions. Strong boundaries, saying, no, this isn't going to work. This is, is this really in the best interest of the children? Asking those hard questions, not being fearful of what his response was going to be, and just standing up, having that boundary, and being solid in trusting the decisions and the point of view that I had in our discussions, not getting heated if there was, pushback or resistance, and just saying, this is what it is, instead of that fight that would potentially, happen. So it was by example. It was literally by example, and that took time.
Yeah. Patience.
Yes.
I'm sure.
The patience. And forgiveness, but a lot of patience.
Oh, I love that. And I love everything that stands for, because that is ultimately, with any relationship we have in our life, it's the same, setting clear boundaries, and they're either going to push back, and you kind of have to set, a line of not talking or communicating anymore, or, they finally break, and then the communication flows. So same here, I guess. And that's awesome.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. Who's a person that you look up to in your life?
Oh, I love this question. I actually have two people on two separate entities. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, I really admire my master coach, Stacey Bayman, what she's created in her life, what she's created, her teachings. I really admire her for what she's done. On the other front, when it comes to being a single mom and co-parenting, and having a very inclusive dynamic, which was an example that I didn't know existed until, I met her as one of my really good friends, Ariana Zucker. So
yeah, shout out.
Yes. Yeah. And so that was when I became friends with her, was when I was in a transition. And so I thought, oh my God, I never really realized that this type of co-parenting / inclusive life could exist. And so she really helped me see a different perspective, and how to incorporate that into my life.
That's awesome. Absolutely. We'll have to tag them in this. That'll be great.
Zucker, yeah.
That'll be great. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I do want to close up with a question kind of dedicated to the listeners, those that are listening now live, or those that are going to be listening on the replay. Speaking to the mothers out there right now, who are just coming out of the other end of divorce. So the divorce is finally finalized, and now they're just sitting here with a signed document, and they're exhausted and they're negative. What would be some advice for those ladies?
I would say take time for yourself. Create some space in your life, especially on a daily basis, to sit with your thoughts, whether it's through, a counselor or a coach or a therapist. Have a place that is a healthy, safe space for you to get your thoughts out, to start to work through things, but also creating just space for yourself, whether it is enjoying that cup of coffee in the morning, going for that walk, having that hot bath. It could be even your nighttime face routine, or whatever it is, just creating space for you to just be peaceful, where you don't have to guide, you don't have to coach, you don't have to teach, you don't have to show up as the professional that you are, and just be you. Look at that person in the mirror and say, it's going to be okay. I'm just going to get to know you a little bit better. I've got your back no matter what. And taking that time.
Absolutely. I love that. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I thank you so much for coming on and taking some time out of your busy day to hang out with us and share some of your goodies. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Gosh, I've so enjoyed, this podcast, and I always love chatting with you. And you always bring some amazing questions, relevant topics, and thank you for creating this space for people to, have a resource and hear stories and connect. I think it's phenomenal. I'm so happy to be a part of this with you, and her version as a whole. I think for the takeaways, for what we've talked about, and I think I've mentioned it multiple times, during this podcast, is this divorce is not the end of the world. There is life on the other side of it. You do still have, your dignity. You can do it with grace. You get to decide and create whatever you want in life. Seek support that can help get you there. And know that you're a whole person. You don't have to have a second half or a partner to be who you are, and just love yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to hang out with us. And with that, we are going to close up. Thank you so much for everybody who's listening to us live. And thank you for those of you that are going to be listening to us on the replay. Do you mind giving your website a shout out before I close up here?
Absolutely. It's leannlazarcoaching.com. You can visit that. There's some great content on there. You can schedule a call with me. You can also follow me on Instagram at Leann Lazar Coaching. There's some wonderful tidbits and information there, and any offers and upcoming events, and also my one-on-one coaching. That is predominantly what I do. I love working with people one-on-one, and my program is a 3-month program. So reach out to me, direct message me, email me, subscribe to my website, Leann Lazar Coaching. I look forward to connecting.
Awesome. I love that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and joining us on the Her Version platform. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here or at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others. Do something awesome today. Much love.